consolate where ye language come to the mercy seat first by I have been interviewing some of our city's leading professionals to discuss why this is the moment to take a stand of historic significance for equality, for justice, and for a community that works communities in our city. To help us understand exactly what's at stake and how it will affect our city, here with us is policy advisor to Portland City Commissioner Chloe Udaling, Miss Winter Johannes. Winter, thanks so much for coming with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and for those of us that don't know what you do, what is it that you do?
Yeah, here and what my purpose is and how we can fight for justice and how we can fight for the government that we deserve. And so how that translates into my day job as policy advisor to Portland City Commissioner is that how do we create the government that works for every one of us?
You said half of your siblings are not here.
Yes.
Tell me what that's about and where are you from and where are your siblings?
So I'm from. And, while I was able to come here because of immigration policies, half of my siblings live in other parts of the world. And so, I think a lot about what it means that I'm the one that's here, what family separation means, and how that actually translates into a lot of conversations and policies around mass incarceration, around the current immigration debates, and around how government is not neutral. Public policy is not created in a vacuum, and government is always either advancing justice or it's advancing injustice, that there's never a middle ground there.
Now, the civic engagement work, understanding that your family was a big part of the reason why you got involved in the first place, but looking a little deeper, what really drove you to this work on a local level and how it affected other people?
You know, locally, it's understanding that Portland City Hall is actually more accessible, I think, than other city governments. And yet, there are many of us who have grown up here, who are from here, who don't feel that it is accessible to us. You know, so I've grown up right here in Northeast Portland, and the very first time I walked into City Hall was for my job interview. And so we need to recognize that there are very real barriers that prevent many of our residents from feeling that City Hall belongs to them and that city government belongs to us. And civic engagement is the process by which we own our government, by which we participate and shape the government that works for all of us.
Own our government.
Yes.
Civic engagement.
Yes.
Can you expound on that just a little bit more? The real meat of civic engagement and why it's so important to us.
You know, so we have been asking people over the last year what civic engagement means to them. And what we hear really clearly is civic engagement is really about how we connect to each other as community and how we connect to our government to advance the changes that we want to see.
Yeah. Being in the city of Portland, raising my children as a single father, understanding the limited access to information. You know, what we can say about the African American community without apology is that we are the first affected and the last informed. You know, it's been said that it's taken us 40 years to change the system of government, this system of engagement. Why is it so controversial right now, and what is the thick of it?
Yeah, so you know, this current conversation is about the Office of Community and Civic Life, which started as the Office of Neighborhood Associations. And so this conversation is really about how government sees us. And, you know, what I want to say about the Black community and many other communities here is that we've been here, that civic engagement is not new, and that there are so many great things already happening, and that this conversation is really about how does city government see those communities, serve those communities, and build up the capacity for many communities to get that information.
Wow. So this topic is really of significant importance. Why does it matter so much right now, especially in this climate that we're in your opinion?
Yeah, you know, Pastor, if I can go back maybe to the last thing that you said about why is this controversial?
Why is it controversial?
You know, I would ask if it is controversial. You know, I think that for many communities who we are having this conversation with, it's actually not controversial. The idea that government should serve all of its residents is not controversial. But we should be asking, who is it controversial to, and, you know, why is it taking us so long to have this conversation?
You know, living in this day and age when we see our nation's leader embracing division, how should we be responding? Okay, we know that it's a controversy. We know that it's been a real huge need for change. How do we do that? What is our steps? Can you kind of give us a trail as to where we really should be starting?
Yeah, you know, I think we start with what you said in the introduction. We start by saying all of us are here, all of us matter, all of us deserve to be represented by our city government, and that our civic engagement in the many forms that it takes should be equally recognized by the city. And that what we don't want is separate structures where some people engage in this way and get this kind of support and others engage in different ways. That what it will take to respond to where we are, especially in the context of the national environment, is that we really need to be in relationship with each other. We really need to be building towards the future that we actually want. And we need to not be shy about saying that future takes all of us, and that is not a losing proposition for anyone.
So everybody has a right to live.
Yes.
And everybody has a right to basic human rights. I remember
Yes.
in 1967, Martin Luther King told us that there was an unsettling force that was going to be loosed upon this nation. And he reminded us that it was going to be more than about civil rights. It was going to be about human rights. Is this where you see this going right now?
Yes. And I think what we're saying is that the fight for civil rights, for human rights, makes all of us better. And that our civic engagement structures should reflect the city's commitment to social justice.
Civil and civic engagement.
Yes.
But especially civic engagement. Non-violent direct action. Is that what you would call that?
Yes, and also, that it's not always about when we're coming together to fight for something. That coming together to celebrate one another, to get to know each other is also valuable. And that is what we're talking about too, is that the city should support us in building community with one another across race, across issues, across identities.
When we talk about coding, and we talk about, most people don't understand code, what that means.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're going to tell us a little bit about that. How do we engage on what those processes are? And when we're talking about these particular codes that we're going to talk about right now, what is the city trying to do?
Yeah. So this particular code that we're talking about is the governing code for the Office of Community and Civic Life. And so in the current code, it says that the city will recognize 3 types of groups: neighborhood associations, neighborhood coalitions, and business districts.
Neighborhood association,
Yes,
neighborhood coalitions, and business district.
that's correct.
Isn't that enough?
Well, can I ask if you think that's enough?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're the expert, and that's why you're here, and
Yes.
not me on that other
Yes.
side. Tell me why that's so important in your opinion.
Yeah, that's not enough because we know that not everybody engages in those structures.
Ah,
And we've known this for a long time. And
tell me why.
there are lots of reasons. I think it might be that the issues that those groups are talking about might not be of interest. That, over the years we've heard that the way that we've set them up makes people feel unwelcome. That it's not the way that other communities decide to organize. That, maybe I actually want to work with the NAACP, or maybe I want to get together with a youth group, or I want to work on environmental issues. And that, civic engagement in those very defined structures, it doesn't work for everyone.
So you're saying that the city has chosen to interact with groups like the neighborhood associations?
Mm-hmm.
What is a neighborhood association, and what does that do for us? And why can't we just go to the neighborhood associations and be a part of them? I mean,
Yeah.
they're there.
Yes, and people are welcome to engage. And it goes back, I think, maybe to what I said at the beginning about how City Hall is open to everyone. But who feels comfortable actually going to City Hall?
Mm-hmm.
Who feels like that is a space for them? And I think it's the same question. It's not that that people should not go to neighborhood associations, but that people might decide to organize in different ways. And so, when the city created the Office of Neighborhood Associations then, it was really to lift up that kind of organizing. But we think about in the 70s, what other types of grassroots organizing was happening. So it's not really about neighborhood associations as it is about how the city has decided which type of grassroots organizing is good and which ones we're not going to listen to in the same way or invest in the same way. And so over the past 40 years, there have been many attempts to say, wait a minute, this structure is not representative of everyone. So how else should we engage communities? And there have been attempts and some successful efforts to invest in other types of structures. Where we are now is we're saying don't have one main kind of structure and then on the side invest in other things and create this sort of patchwork of civic engagement. Let's create a unified framework for civic engagement that says from the very top level, which is code, everyone matters. We are not going to choose, whether we're going to listen to this group or that group. What we're going to commit to is serving all Portlanders.
So you're saying that there is a pipeline to information with these other entities, example given NAACP, Urban League, etc., but it becomes clogged when the players, especially with neighborhood associations, are not stakeholders. They're not property owners per se. They are renters, etc. So you don't really feel like going into a neighborhood association meeting that you have a real strong voice, perhaps, and you don't have a vested interest. So what can you really do? And when does that happen? And when do I have time as a single parent or as a working parent? And when do those meetings exist? Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, all of what you have said has been reflected in feedback that the city has received over many, many years. And the question is, when does the city actually meaningfully act on that? Because I think what is controversial is actually our current structure, that the city has said, we will decide who is the meaningful representative of the community voice, when we know that there are lots of legitimate representatives, and we actually don't have to choose. We can say, community, you choose how you want to come together. You choose how you want to be served by government. And as government, it's our job to figure out how to respond and how to create the systems that can take that meaningful feedback.
What does this mean in terms of dollars and cents for the community? We know that most issues, bottom line, is where does the buck stop? Yeah. Show me the money. What kind of money are we talking about? And is it worth talking about?
That is a good question. And so, the budget for the Office of Community and Civic Life is about $12 million.
Wow.
Which, in the context of the city government is not a lot, but $12 million is a lot. Yes, I would be very happy to get $12 million.
Yes. It can do a lot.
It's true. It's true. And then, within the dollars that go out, a lot of the conversation is around the neighborhood. In the neighborhood structure, through the coalition offices, we fund about $3 million. And then we have the Diverse Civic Leadership Program, which is about $1 million. And so at the code conversation, we're not yet talking about dollars, because we're saying, how can we spend the money if we don't identify what we're trying to do with it?
Yeah.
And that if you have a code that just says these structures are important, you can add to that list, but the money will never go far enough unless you say what we want to do with our $12 million or with our $3 million is we want to advance social justice. We want to have a bureau that serves all Portlanders. And so down the line, maybe you make different decisions about what programs you fund and how you are supporting civic engagement. I think it's notable that Portland has a vibrant Black community that has a long history of civic engagement and contributing, and yet how has the city actually invested in that? It's really in spite of the city that community has come together to build these groups and organizations that have done really great things for the city.
I'm going to put you on the edge, Miss Johannes.
Please.
Talk about what you can't talk about. Okay. Now, we want the dirt.
Okay.
We want to know, where is our best efforts and what should we be doing as an African American community? What are those best efforts? We know that we ought to be engaged, but what is the first step?
That is a big question.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that in Portland and nationally, Black leaders have always been at the forefront of fights for justice, and communities of color more broadly. And so in this conversation in particular, I actually think it's an opportunity for our white allies to say, we want our civic engagement dollars and programs to reflect the reality, which is that communities of color continue to fight for justice and to make Portland the city that it says it is. And so we want to be in partnership, and we want to support this vision of a Portland that is big enough for all of us. If the question is more directly, how should people engage? My question is always, what is it that you want to do? And who are others who want to do that work with you? And in Portland, really, there's so much happening that, that's the first step is what is it that you want to do?
Mm-hmm. Making Portland the city that's big enough for all of us.
Yes.
I think that's a big statement. And I think that's a pretty safe statement to end this conversation on. If you were to have any last moment thoughts, oh my God, I didn't get a chance to say this. Give me a thought that you would say, we didn't really get a chance to talk about this, and we'd like to kind of pick that up the next time we're together, but leave us with a real deafening thought.
Wow. I think that we are at a moment where, especially in this policy conversation, the question really is, do we think all Portlanders matter?
Yes.
And are we ready to put that into code language? Are we ready to have a code that tells the truth about who we are, about the origins of our democracy, and about the future that we say we want? And how can we not say that we are ready for that?
Wow, Winter. I don't think that I could have said it any better. Put your money where
That's
your
it.
mouth is, Portland. Hey, thank you for being here with us today. I'm so happy that you came, and we're going to do a show later on with some students. I think that we're going to continue this conversation with, and we're going to talk about what the younger folk think about this. I mean, younger than me. Listen, I want to be very clear. My goal with these episodes is to address how our city, your city, has been engaging with us as its residents over the years, and to share how it's been hurting us all. It's time to expand the reach of Portland's Office of Community and Civic Life. It's up to us, all of us, to make sure that Portland has an inclusive and vital culture of civic engagement. That means we must make demands on power, starting with real justice for our communities of color. I can't do that alone, and neither can you. We can only do it together, as one voice with many demands. Until this city is a community that lives up to its stated goals of inclusion, diversity, and social justice for all, we will not sit down. Thank you for watching Removing the Thorns, and remember to join us for the NAACP's annual Freedom Gala, Removing the Thorns of Racism, in the City of Roses at the Lloyd Center Doubletree on October 5th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. with special guest star, gospel legend Zella Jackson Price of Say Amen, Somebody. Please don't forget to purchase your tickets. Look, www.pdxnaacp.org. That's where you make the purchase. United, we have the power to confront the forces of hate by celebrating the fundamental dignity of every human being. I'm Mondaine. See you next week at the same time. Until then, remember, Stay strong.